Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner. Thank you for joining us on washingtonexaminer.com, and I encourage you to visit the website and our YouTube channel. I'm joined today by Byron York, our Chief Political Correspondent. Byron, since we last spoke, there have been a lot of nominations from President-elect Donald Trump. I want to focus at first on the energy team. He's picked Chris Wright, an energy entrepreneur, to be Energy Secretary. Allied to that, he's picked former Governor Doug Burgum, a one-time presidential rival, to be the Interior Secretary. Mm-hmm. He comes from a state rich in energy, and he will have responsibility for opening up federal lands to energy exploration. And he's picked former Congressman Lee Zeldin to run the EPA. So you've got a really coherent energy team. And all this suggests an emphasis in the Trump administration on having a sensible, high-productivity energy sector serving Americans and American national interests, kind of getting again to energy dominance. Is that right?
You have to remember the energy team is the economic team with Trump, because first of all, the biggest reason he was elected was to fix the economy, to bring prices down and bring growth up. And if you listen to him on the campaign trail, he was always talking about doing that by unleashing American energy, drill, baby, drill. And the way to do that is to get through a lot of what Republicans think are needless regulations concerning energy exploration and production, and export internationally as well, and get that all going. And that, to Trump, is the key to making the economy better. So when you say energy team, yes, they're dealing with the energy, but it's really a core part of the economic team.
And I think it's also a part of the sort of national security team in that it instead of enriching our enemies, Russia and Iran, by making their oil more necessary for others, we can sell our oil abroad, and so people will become more reliant on us and less reliant on our enriched enemies. So let's turn to another nomination, that is of Linda McMahon, a wrestling entrepreneur who's been put in charge, or being put in charge, of the Education Department. She's certainly the kind of person to shake things up. Is she there, do you think, to close the Energy Department down?
Well, she doesn't have some history in education. This is not like Bill Bennett or someone who's had a life as a scholar beforehand. But, you know, I'll believe it when I see it. Republicans and conservatives have talked about shutting down the Education Department for a very, very long time.
Right.
And I think a lot of them would be happy if she could keep it from growing.
Right.
Or she could rein in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Education. Or if she could just make it less activist and shrink it. I think the idea of actually closing it down, it was created by Congress, not the Constitution, but it was created by Congress. Right. I think that's probably a bridge too far.
Yeah, it was created only under President Jimmy Carter, and people talk about it as though it's absolutely impossible to do without. But in fact, the Republic did without it for 200 years.
Oh, it doesn't have to exist.
No, exactly. So now, Linda McMahon wanted commerce. That's going to Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick had been touted by, amongst others, Elon Musk for the Treasury. It seems that one knows who the names are of the people who will be on Team Trump. One just doesn't know what positions they're going to play in. And this makes me, I read an essay by AEI scholar Yuval Levin just in the last day or so, which was about the fact that these people are just people who have certain competence and they know how to be executives. They are not people who are valued for some track record of specialization in a particular bureaucracy. That's not what Trump is looking for.
I think the fact that it's taken some time just indicates the importance of the core of the economic team. Obviously, we were just talking about a wing of that, the energy wing. But if you remember back in the first Trump transition, he really couldn't find a Secretary of State. He was looking everywhere for a Secretary of State. Ended up with Rex Tillerson, who'd been the CEO of ExxonMobil, was not a good Secretary of State. And so it just worked out badly. Here, I think it's taking a while because there were several candidates for and the heart of it all is the Treasury Secretary job. There were several candidates for that. Howard Lutnick, who has been running the transition, was clearly one of them. He did have some enemies, and I think being given the Commerce Department is kind of viewed as a consolation prize for him. But what's going on now, this jockeying and everything, just I think indicates how central Trump thinks the Secretary of the Treasury will be to his second administration.
Yeah. It's actually interesting with Howard Lutnick and McMahon. They're helping in transition, helping choose people. It's a little like Dick Cheney helping George W. Bush,
yes.
you know, choose a vice president.
But Cheney was subtle enough to hang back and, oh, me? You've thought about me for vice president?
Yes.
Maybe Howard Lutnick didn't quite do it that way.
Finally, Dr. Oz at CMS. Now, no one, I think, expects Dr. Oz to be crunching the numbers at CMS and doing the back work. He's going to be there, as I think a lot of these people are, because they're good at presenting things. It seems that, you know, if there are, for example, Pete Hegseth at Department of Defense, if he manages to get through the confirmation process, it's partly because he's been on TV for 10 or 15 years and he's very good at presenting things. That seems to be a really important part of what Donald Trump wants from the team that he's putting in place.
Yeah, and I think the idea of stressing communications is a pretty good idea. And now this is a huge job. I mean, Medicare is like one of the biggest single components of the federal budget. The amount that's spent on it is just astonishing. And if you could bring it down just a little bit percentage-wise, you would save untold amounts of money. So it's really important. What's Dr. Oz's experience in that? Well, he's not a medical bureaucrat. I mean, he's been a doctor and a medical performer, and you know he did run an okay race for the Senate, lost to John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, but he has political skills, and he has really good communication skills. So I think that's probably a good idea for Trump.
We're beginning to get a really good sense of what Donald Trump is looking for. We'll be back to discuss these things again. Thank you very much, Byron, for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Please come back to the Washington Examiner at washingtonexaminer.com. Join us on our YouTube channel and join us again for Political Perspectives.